The idea of a perfect retirement age sounds simple, but when you actually dig into the numbers, the trade-offs, and the real-life unpredictability of work and health, it quickly becomes clear that retirement is less about picking a number and more about building a system that can support you no matter when life forces the decision. Most people grow up believing that retirement happens somewhere around the mid to late 60s, almost like a fixed destination, but the reality is far more fluid. Some people retire early because they planned aggressively and built enough income streams, while others are pushed out of the workforce earlier than expected due to layoffs, health issues, or family responsibilities. That's why the real question isn't what age should I retire, but rather when will I be financially and mentally ready to retire. And those are two very different things. One of the biggest factors people overlook when thinking about retirement timing is the trade-off between claiming benefits early versus waiting. At first glance, taking money earlier seems like the obvious choice. After all, getting paid sooner feels like winning, but the system is designed to reward patience. The longer you wait, up to a certain point, the larger your monthly income becomes. However, this creates a hidden gamble. If you delay benefits, you're essentially betting on your own lifespan. The math often shows a break-even age where waiting starts to pay off compared to claiming early, but that assumes you live long enough to reach that point. If you don't, then waiting actually leaves money on the table. This is where retirement planning becomes deeply personal. It's not just about averages or studies. It's about your health, your family history, and your risk tolerance. Another overlooked reality is that retirement doesn't always happen on your schedule. Many people imagine they'll work until a certain age, save diligently, and then smoothly transition into retirement. But the data tells a different story. A large percentage of workers end up retiring earlier than they planned, and not because they wanted to. Job loss in your late 50s or early 60s can be especially difficult to recover from. Age discrimination, rapidly changing skill requirements, and economic downturns can all make it harder to re-enter the workforce. On top of that, health problems can suddenly change your ability to work, forcing you into retirement before your finances are fully ready. This means that planning for retirement isn't just about hitting a target age. It's about building flexibility so that if retirement comes early, you're not caught off guard. As you move through your working life, there are several key milestones that quietly shape your retirement options, whether you realize it or not. These milestones aren't just numbers. They represent shifts in what you can access, how you can withdraw money, and what kind of financial strategies become available to you. One of the earliest of these milestones occurs in your mid-50s, when certain retirement accounts become more flexible if you leave your job. This can open the door to early retirement strategies that many people don't even realize exist. However, these strategies come with strict rules, and making the wrong move like transferring funds too early can eliminate those benefits entirely. It's a perfect example of how small decisions can have long-term consequences. In retirement planning, as you approach your late 50s, another major shift occurs. This is the point where retirement accounts become much easier to access without penalties. For many people, this is the first time retirement starts to feel real, because the money they've been saving for decades is no longer locked away. But just because you can access it doesn't mean you should. Early withdrawals reduce the amount of money that remains invested, which can significantly impact how long your savings last. Retirement isn't just about getting to a point where you can stop working. It's about ensuring that your money continues working for you long after your paycheck stops. Then comes the early 60s, which is where the retirement conversation becomes even more complex. This is typically when people gain access to certain government benefits, but taking them early comes with a permanent reduction. This creates a difficult decision. Do you take less money now to reduce financial stress, or do you wait and potentially receive more later? There's no universal answer, because it depends on your overall financial picture. If you have strong savings and other income streams, waiting might make sense. But if you're relying heavily on those benefits to cover basic expenses, claiming early might be the safer choice. This is where having multiple sources of income becomes incredibly valuable, because it gives you more control over when and how you access each one. One of the biggest financial challenges for early retirees is something that doesn't get nearly enough attention: healthcare. Before you reach the age where government healthcare programs begin, you're responsible for covering your own insurance, and the cost can be shockingly high. This is often the single biggest expense gap in early retirement plans. Many people underestimate it or assume they'll figure it out later, but that approach can quickly derail an otherwise solid retirement strategy. If you retire even a few years before qualifying for a healthcare coverage, you could be looking at tens of thousands of dollars in additional expenses. That's money that needs to come from your savings, which means less money available for everything else. As you move into your mid to late 60s, retirement planning becomes less about access and more about optimization. This is the stage where decisions about when to fully retire, how to structure withdrawals, and how to maximize benefits can have long-term effects on your financial stability. Waiting longer to claim certain benefits can significantly increase your monthly income, but it also requires you to either keep working or rely on your savings in the meantime. This creates a balancing act between preserving your savings and maximizing your guaranteed income. The right choice depends on your priorities. Some people value security and predictability, while others prefer flexibility and early freedom. But beyond all the numbers and strategies, there's a deeper layer to retirement that often gets ignored: readiness. Financial readiness is only one part of the equation. You also need to consider whether you're mentally and emotionally prepared for retirement. Work provides more than just income. It provides structure, purpose, and social interaction. When that suddenly disappears, it can create a void that money alone can't fill. This is why some retirees end up returning to work, not because they need the income, but because they miss the sense of purpose. A successful retirement plan doesn't just replace your paycheck, it replaces the role that work played in your life. To truly understand whether you're ready to retire, you need to ask yourself a series of honest questions. The first and most obvious one is whether your income can cover your expenses without relying on a paycheck. This includes not just your basic needs, but also unexpected costs and emergencies. Retirement is not a static phase of life. Things will go wrong, and you need a buffer to handle them. The second question is how you'll handle healthcare, especially if you're retiring early. This is one of the most underestimated risks in retirement planning, and ignoring it can lead to serious financial strain. The third question is about time, specifically how long your money needs to last. This is where longevity risk comes into play. People are living longer than ever, which means your retirement savings need to stretch further. A retirement that lasts 20 years requires a very different strategy than one that lasts 30 or 35 years. This affects everything from how aggressively you invest to how much you withdraw each year. Taking too much too early can leave you vulnerable later in life, while being too conservative can prevent you from enjoying your retirement to the fullest. The fourth question is about debt. Carrying debt into retirement adds a layer of risk that can make even a well-funded retirement feel unstable. Monthly payments reduce your financial flexibility and increase the amount of income you need to generate. Many of the happiest retirees share one common trait: they entered retirement with little to no debt. This doesn't happen by accident. It's the result of intentional planning in the years leading up to retirement. Paying off debt before you retire is one of the most powerful ways to reduce financial stress and increase your sense of security. Despite all the planning, all the calculations, and all the strategies, there's one reality that no one can ignore. Retirement is unpredictable. You can do everything right and still face unexpected challenges. That's why the goal isn't to create a perfect plan, but to create a resilient one. A resilient retirement plan can adapt to changes in your health, the economy, and your personal circumstances. It includes multiple income streams, a solid emergency fund, and a clear understanding of your expenses. It also includes the flexibility to adjust your lifestyle if needed. In the end, the concept of a perfect retirement age is a myth. There is no single number that works for everyone. Because everyone's situation is different. What matters is not when you retire, but how prepared you are when that moment arrives. Some people will reach that point in their early 60s, others in their late 60s or beyond, and some may never fully retire in the traditional sense. The key is to focus on building a financial foundation that gives you options. Options to retire early if you choose, options to keep working if you enjoy it, and options to handle unexpected events without derailing your entire plan. Retirement should not be seen as an end, but as a transition into a new phase of life. A phase where your time is no longer dictated by a paycheck, but by your own priorities and interests. Getting there requires more than just saving money. It requires understanding the systems that affect your income, anticipating the challenges you'll face, and making decisions that align with your long-term goals. When you approach retirement this way, the question shifts from what is the perfect age to have I built a life that I'm ready to step into? And that's a much more powerful question to answer.